What happens when a place that's supposed to follow one rule: save lives gets turned into a stage for dirty power plays, where an intern can throw coffee on someone in the middle of a hospital lobby, then scream, "My wife is the CEO," like dignity, discipline, and basic decency are things you can buy with a name. Americans like to say character is what you do when no one's watching. But when hundreds of eyes are on you and the wrong person thinks they're untouchable, do you swallow the humiliation to keep the peace? Or do you call the person at the top down to the lobby and let the truth speak for itself? Before we dive into today's story, let us know where you're tuning in from. It's always amazing to see where our stories travel. Don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the next twist in this journey. Now, let's listen to him from the heart. The Boeing dropped through a sheet of gray Chicago clouds and hit O'Hare's runway with that blunt, heavy thud that always rattled your teeth no matter how many times you flew. After a month of airports, boardrooms, factory floors, and polite smiles across long tables in Europe, I should have felt relief the second my wheels touched home. Instead, I felt tight. Not the normal travel fatigue either, though my body had plenty of that. My shoulders ached from carrying the weight of meetings stacked back to back, my eyes burned from too little sleep, and I still had that stale, plain air taste in my mouth. This was something sharper. Something I couldn't name yet, like my instincts were tapping the glass trying to get my attention. I stepped into the terminal with my carry-on rolling behind me, the air thick with late summer humidity that always clung to Chicago like it had a grudge. People moved in, rushed little clusters, families, business travelers, couples in matching hoodies, and I slipped between them on autopilot. My phone vibrated again, then again, and again. Evelyn Park. My executive assistant was blowing it up. VIP, meeting schedule, media briefing notes, a reminder about the investor delegation tour, a note about the board summary I still owed from Germany. Normal stuff. Stuff that usually meant my day would be long and my coffee would be cold by the time I took a second sip. Then one line jumped out like a splinter. HR requesting approval for a special exception for a new intern per direct instruction from the CEO. I stopped walking for half a beat right there in the flow of bodies and stared at the screen. A special exception for an intern in a hospital. I kept my face neutral. People watch strangers too much these days, hungry for drama even in an airport. But inside something shifted. It wasn't that I didn't trust Vivian, my wife, our CEO. It was that I knew how carefully she curated what people saw. Vivian was brilliant at optics. She could walk into a room full of skeptics and make them believe in her just by holding eye contact and saying the right thing with the right confidence. And I'd built my life around letting her be that person. On paper, I was the Chief Strategy Officer of Northbridge University Hospital. That was the title under my name on internal emails, the line on my business cards, the role that kept me comfortably just off-center in every photo. In reality, I held 60% of Northbridge Health Holdings, the controlling stake, the final vote, the power that sat quiet until it had to speak. My father had built this system, not just the hospital on the lakefront, but the entire network, clinics, specialty centers, partnerships across the region. He built it the old way, with stubborn integrity, ruthless standards, and a belief that medicine should never be treated like a vanity project. When he died, fast, ugly, unfair, the weight of everything he'd built fell on me. I was 31. And suddenly standing in front of a boardroom full of men who'd known my father longer than they'd known me, men who smiled with their mouths and calculated with their eyes. Vivian helped me survive that first year. She was my anchor in the chaos. She knew how to talk to donors and politicians. She knew how to smooth conflict into something that looked like agreement. She could charm the kind of people who would rather be impressed than be right. So I put her in the CEO chair. Publicly, it was a modern power couple decision, 2 leaders, 1 mission. Privately, it was me protecting our legacy by letting Vivian handle the front-facing war, while I handled the negotiations, the contracts, the strategies that actually kept the doors open and the lights on. That's why I'd been in Europe for a month. It wasn't a vacation. It was factories and floor plans. It was me walking through sterile showrooms in Frankfurt and Munich, listening to engineers explain what their machines could do, watching demo units scan phantom models, negotiating every line of warranty and maintenance terms because those details were the difference between a hospital that saves lives and a hospital that just looks impressive in a brochure. Vivian should have been the one on that trip as CEO. But Vivian wasn't built for the weeds. She hated technical arguments, the kind you couldn't smile your way through. She could sell a vision, but if someone challenged her on numbers, her patience wore thin. She knew it. I knew it. We didn't say it out loud. So I handled it. Like I always did. And now, fresh off the plane, I was reading about HR making special exceptions for a new intern. My jaw tightened. I didn't call Vivian. Not yet. I could have gone home. I could have kissed my kids awake, told them Daddy was back. Let the smell of our kitchen and the comfort of our own bed wipe away the month of airports. But the message from Evelyn didn't feel like something you ignored, so I texted her back as I walked. What kind of exception? She replied immediately, like she'd been waiting with her thumb hovering over the keyboard. Dress code exception, temporary admin access. Security flagged it as unusual. It came from the CEO office. Temporary admin access. For an intern. That wasn't just unusual. That was reckless. I kept moving, shoulders squared, face calm. Outside, a black car waited curbside, a driver holding a tablet with my name on it. I climbed in, shut the door, and the city noise muted to a low hum behind tinted glass. The car eased into traffic, and Chicago rose around me, steel and glass lake wind, familiar streets that somehow always looked both new and worn at the same time. Downtown cut the horizon with its sharp, proud angles, and I felt that old mix of pride and pressure hit my chest. This wasn't just a hospital. It was my father's last heartbeat. It was the thing he left behind when his own body failed him. I opened my email while the car rolled over the Kennedy, the skyline growing larger as if it was leaning toward me. There it was again. The thing that had been nagging at me even in Germany. A chain of emails from our German supplier, waiting on confirmation of initial payment. Yet the internal report I'd received from our finance team sent 3 days ago said the deposit was already transferred. Confirmed. Cleared. 2 truths. One of them had to be a lie. Either finance made a mistake so big it should have gotten someone fired, or someone was fabricating reality inside our system the way a magician palms a coin. I stared out the window for a moment and tried to steady my breathing. Don't jump. Don't accuse without evidence. That was my father's voice in my head, quiet, but absolute. The man never let emotion steer the wheel, but the feeling in my gut didn't ease. When the car pulled up to Northbridge University Hospital, I told the driver to stop at the main entrance. He glanced back at me. "Sir, we can take the executive entrance around number 1, I said. I stepped out, dragged my carry-on from the trunk, and rolled it across the sidewalk like I was just another tired family member arriving for a long day in a waiting room. Northbridge rose in front of me, 20 floors of modern glass, our logo stamped clean and sharp over the revolving doors. The building looked proud, polished, controlled, but buildings could look like anything. Culture was what lived inside. I walked in and was hit by the cold blast of air conditioning mixed with antiseptic and coffee. The lobby buzzed with the familiar chaos of a hospital, the PA system chiming patient numbers, the low murmur of families, the squeak of shoes on tile, the quick clipped urgency of nurses moving like they were stitched to the clock. I stood near the reception desk, slightly off to the side where I could observe without being in the way. I adjusted the cuff of my shirt the way I always did when I needed to center myself. 5 minutes, I told myself. 5 minutes to see the rhythm. Then I'd go upstairs, surprise Vivian, and quietly ask the right questions. That plan lasted maybe 30 seconds. My eyes caught on a scene unfolding in the center of the lobby where 2 hallways intersected. Dr. Naomi Chen, our head of cardiology, was on her knees on the marble floor performing CPR on a middle-aged man who'd collapsed. A nurse was kneeling beside her, working, fast voice, tight and focused. Naomi's hands moved with practiced precision, compressions deep and steady, her face set in that intense calm that real physicians wear when there's no room for panic. Sweat beaded at her hairline. Her ponytail had come loose. Her white coat was open and moving with every push like even her clothing couldn't sit still. "Give her space," she said, voice firm enough to cut through the noise. "He needs oxygen. Somebody get me a glucose meter and a warm sugar solution now." People obeyed her instantly. Strangers backed up. Staff moved like a choreographed team. The man's wife was sobbing quietly a few feet away, hands over her mouth, eyes wide with terror. I felt my throat tighten. Naomi hadn't changed, not in the ways that mattered. I'd known her since med school, back when my life was just anatomy exams and night shifts and cheap coffee. Naomi was the kind of person who never chased attention, never cared about titles. She cared about one thing: the patient in front of her. When my father died, Naomi was the one who stayed. 3 days. 3 nights. She handled details I didn't even know existed, stood beside the casket with a quiet strength that made the room feel steadier. Vivian had been there too, technically, but Vivian spent most of that time entertaining donors, shaking hands, making sure the right people saw her grief in the right lighting. She called it keeping the system stable. Maybe she believed it. Watching Naomi work now, I felt that old admiration wash through me, the kind that comes with a sting because you realize how rare it is to find someone who still treats medicine like something sacred. And then I looked up. A flat screen in the lobby mounted above the information desk was running an internal news loop. A crisp graphic flashed across the screen: CEO Vivian Sloan to address investor delegation today on Northbridge's next-generation equipment strategy. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was bitter. I'd been in Europe doing the actual work of that strategy. The negotiations, the contracts, the technical details Vivian hated. And now her face was going to be the one in front of the investors, presenting it like she'd personally wrangled the future into place. I could have swallowed that. I usually did. I'd built my marriage around swallowing things quietly. But then my phone vibrated again. Another message from Evelyn. Thane, small but weird. Security just reissued an executive floor keycard to someone with no appropriate title. Request came from CEO office. My fingers tightened around my phone. Executive floor. Admin access. Intern. The words lined up in my mind like pieces of a lock clicking into place. I looked back across the lobby. Naomi was finishing up, staff lifting the patient onto a gurney, rushing him toward imaging. The crowd began to thin, the moment of crisis dissolving back into normal hospital motion. And somewhere beneath the surface of that normal motion, something was wrong. I didn't know exactly what yet, but I could smell it. And whoever was using Vivian's office to open doors that shouldn't be opened was about to find out I'd come home. The gurney disappeared down the corridor and the lobby exhaled. People returned to what they'd been doing, checking in, arguing with insurance paperwork, walking too fast with too much fear in their eyes. A hospital never stayed quiet for long. It just shifted its noise from crisis to routine. I stayed near the reception desk, still off to the side, still anonymous. Naomi wiped her hands with a towel a nurse handed her, said something brief to the team, and started toward the elevators. She didn't look up. She didn't see me. Or maybe she did, and decided not to acknowledge it. Naomi had always understood boundaries, the visible ones and the invisible ones. I watched her go, and something inside me wanted to call after her, wanted to hear a familiar voice in the middle of the storm forming in my gut. But I didn't. Not yet. The revolving doors at the main entrance spun again, and the energy in the lobby shifted in a way I felt before I fully saw it, like the air itself stiffened. A young man walked in like he owned the building. He was maybe 22, maybe younger, depending on how much confidence can age a person. He had a coffee in one hand, and his phone in the other, and his outfit looked like it belonged at a nightclub, not a hospital at 9 in the morning. Loud shoes. Designer belt, shirt tight enough to make a point. Hair styled like he'd spent more time in front of a mirror than in orientation. His blue badge swung on a lanyard. Cody Rains. Intern. And right beneath his name in small stamped text, I saw something that made my stomach drop. Dress code exception. Approved. Temp admin access. Active. Cody didn't walk toward a department. He didn't check in with a supervisor. He didn't even glance at the information desk. He went straight toward the valet area near the entrance, where Hal Jenkins, our longtime valet, was directing cars with the patient, careful patience of someone who understood he was dealing with stressed people on their worst days. Hal was older, hair, white posture, still proud in that quiet way veterans carry themselves. He'd worked here since my father's time. My dad trusted him the way he trusted very few people. Cody didn't greet Hal. He snapped. "Are you kidding me?" He barked loud enough that people turned. "I told you to park my car in the shade. Do you have any idea what the sun does to black leather?" Hal blinked surprised, then immediately went apologetic in that way service workers learn to survive. "I'm sorry, sir. We've had ambulances coming in and out, lots of movement. I'll move it right now." Cody rolled his eyes like Hal had personally insulted him. "You move like a turtle," he said, voice dripping with contempt. "How does someone like you even get a job at a 5-star hospital?" Hal's mouth opened slightly, like he was searching for a response that wouldn't escalate. He didn't find one. He just nodded again, taking the hit the way good people do when they're trying to keep the peace. Something hot climbed up my neck. It wasn't just disrespect. It was the casual cruelty of a person who believed there would never be consequences. Cody turned away from Hal as if he was already bored and lifted his phone. His whole face changed in a second like someone flipped a switch. The scowl became a bright, performative smile and his voice went syrupy. "Hey, besties," he said into the camera. "Good morning. It's your boy Cody, and I've already got drama before my shift even starts." He angled the camera just right to catch the hospital logo behind him, the expensive lobby, the people moving like background extras. "I swear the staff here is... whoo. But whatever, we stay cute. We stay positive. Tap the hearts for me, okay?" He laughed like he was filming from a penthouse instead of standing in a building where people were literally dying one hallway away. I glanced at my watch. 9:15 a.m. Our shifts started at 8. More than an hour late, dressed like a walking billboard, publicly humiliating an elderly coworker and live streaming it like it was content. And he was an intern. My grip tightened on the handle of my carry-on until my knuckles went pale. This wasn't just one obnoxious kid. This was a symptom. The question was of what I stepped forward. Not fast, not angry. Just decisive. I reached Hal, first placed a hand on his shoulder and felt him flinch. Then he looked up, recognized me, and his eyes widened. He started to speak, to say my name. I put a finger to my lips, quick and subtle. A silent request. Hal swallowed the greeting and nodded. His eyes stayed wide, but he didn't betray me. "Good man." Then I turned to Cody. "Excuse me," I said, voice calm, steady. The kind of tone that doesn't ask for permission. "This is a hospital, not a runway, not a social media set. You don't speak to people like that in here, especially not to someone old enough to be your grandfather." Cody lowered his phone just enough to look me up and down. He scanned me like he was pricing me, trying to decide where I belonged in his imaginary hierarchy. I was in travel-worn business clothes, nice but simple. No flashy logos, no performance. In his eyes, I was nobody. "And who are you?" he said, lips curling. "Because you're real bold for someone who doesn't work here." "I'm someone who respects this place," I replied. "And someone who knows the rules. You're late. You're out of dress code. You're filming without consent. Turn that off, apologize to Mr. Jenkins, and go report to your supervisor." Cody's expression shifted into mock pity, like I'd just told him the earth was flat. "Oh my God," he said to his phone, turning the camera back toward me, shoving it too close. "Look at this, y'all. Some random, bitter dude trying to lecture me. He angled it so my face was in frame. He wanted the comments, the reactions, the humiliation. "Sir," he said loud and theatrical, "go find a seat and mind your business. I'm literally an employee." I felt Hal tense under my hand. Around us, a few people slowed down, sensing the collision. Cody smirked like he lived for that, like attention was oxygen. I kept my voice level. "Put the phone down." Cody laughed, not even hiding it. "Are you threatening me?" "No," I said. "I'm warning you." That word warning seemed to amuse him even more. He leaned closer, lowering his voice just a little, like he wanted it to feel intimate and dangerous. "You don't know who you're talking to," he said. Then he straightened and said something that made my blood run colder than the coffee in his hand. I'm not like the other interns. I'm here because the person at the top brought me in. I held his gaze. The person at the top, Cody's smile widened. You ask too many questions. He doesn't like his name being thrown around. He, not she. A tiny detail, one pronoun landed like a stone in my stomach. If Vivian had personally approved him, Cody would have said she. Vivian was the CEO. Vivian was the headline. Vivian loved being the face. So why did Cody say he? I didn't let my expression change. Hal shifted beside me, bending slightly as if to pick something up. A plastic card had slipped out of Cody's pocket and skidded near Hal's shoe. Hal reached down, picked it up, and held it out. Sir Hal said carefully, still playing along with my silence. You dropped this. Cody snatched it so fast it was almost violent. Too fast for someone who wasn't worried. But I'd already seen it. The colored strip along the edge. Executive floor. Admin. My mind flicked back to Evelyn's text. Security just reissued an executive floor keycard to someone with no appropriate title. I stared at Cody for a long beat, and for the first time something like uncertainty flashed behind his arrogance. A microsecond of fear that he'd slipped. Then he lifted his chin, trying to reclaim the moment. Yeah, he said, smug again. That's right. I go where I want. People were watching now. Not a full crowd, but enough. Cody's live stream comments were probably flying. People online love this kind of thing, someone being loud, someone being put in their place, the illusion of power. I could have ended it right there. One call to security. One whisper to HR, Cody escorted out. Internship terminated. Case closed. But the smell of something off hadn't gone away. Because Cody wasn't the root. He was the leaf. Someone gave him that badge. Someone stamped those exceptions. Someone handed him a keycard to places interns should never touch. And he'd just said the person at the top was a he. I let my hand fall from Hal's shoulder, but I gave him a small nod, my promise that I saw him, that this wasn't going to be another day where good people swallowed humiliation for the comfort of cowards. Then I looked at Cody and made a decision so quiet even I didn't hear it out loud. I wasn't going to call security yet. I wanted Cody to keep talking. I wanted him to step just a little further into his own arrogance, because that's when people reveal who they really are and who's standing behind them. I met his eyes and kept my voice calm, almost conversational. All right, I said. Then let's see how far that keycard really gets you. Cody smirked like he'd already won. And in my head I made myself a promise that felt like locking a door. If he takes one more step, one more insult, one more abuse of that borrowed power, I'm pulling the person backing him straight down into this lobby right in front of everyone. Cody loved an audience. The second he noticed the stairs turning sharp, people's faces tightening, a nurse pausing mid-step, a security guard on the far end of the lobby glancing over, he adjusted like a performer who felt the crowd slipping away. He raised his phone higher, angled it so the hospital logo sat over his shoulder like a trophy, and turned his voice up a notch. See, he said to the camera loud enough for anyone within 20 feet to hear. This is exactly what I'm talking about. People come in here and think they can harass staff. Harass staff. Like Hal hadn't just been publicly humiliated by a kid wearing privilege like cologne. A couple strangers stopped walking altogether. One guy by the vending machines pulled out his phone not because he cared who was right, but because drama was free entertainment. A woman with a tote bag shifted closer, eyes wide, eager for a story she could retell later. I could feel the lobby tilting. Not toward truth, toward noise. I kept my voice level. Turn it off. Cody laughed through his nose like I'd told him the sky was green. You don't get to tell me what to do, he said, still filming. You're not security. You're not my boss. You're late to your shift, I said. You're violating policy. You're filming people without consent in a medical facility. You're verbally abusing an employee. Turn off the live stream, apologize to Mr. Jenkins, and go report in. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. In my father's world, real authority didn't scream. It simply stated what was going to happen next. Cody's eyes narrowed. His grin stayed, but it turned meaner around the edges. You keep talking like you run this place, he said. You don't. I looked at Hal. The old man stood stiffly by the valet desk, jaw-tight hands clasped in front of him, like he was holding himself together with willpower. When our eyes met, he gave the tiniest shake of his head, his silent way of saying, "Don't let him do this to you. Don't let him drag you down in front of everyone." I nodded once. For Hal, I stayed calm. For the last time, I said slow and clear, "Turn it off. If you don't, I'm calling security and HR, and you're going to have a formal incident report on your record before 10 o'clock. Cody's mouth twitched the way someone's does when they're trying not to show they've been challenged. "Oh, you're calling HR," he mocked. "That's adorable." He lifted the iced coffee in his hand, half-melted dark sweating through the plastic cup. He shifted his stance like he was about to walk around me. "Move," he said, and his shoulder came forward. To anyone watching quickly, it would look accidental. A little bump, a little clumsy turn, something you could shrug off. But I saw the intention in his eyes a fraction of a second before it happened. The careful angle, the calculated force. He slammed into me. Cold coffee exploded across the front of my shirt and down my pants in a nasty soaking splash. It hit with a shock that stole my breath, sticky and freezing at the same time, spattering my shoes and pooling on the polished floor. For a split second, all I could smell was bitter espresso and sugar. My clothes clung to my skin. The fabric darkened fast like a bruise spreading. The lobby went silent in that stunned electric way it does when something crosses a line. Then Cody threw his head back and yelled like he'd just been stabbed. "Whoa, what the hell?" he shouted, stepping back theatrically. He pushed me. His voice rang off the marble and glass. A couple people gasped. Someone behind me muttered, "Diddy?" Cody's phone kept rolling. He angled it toward his own face, his expression instantly morphing into injured innocence. Y'all saw that he cried to the camera. "This man just assaulted me. In my workplace." He looked at the coffee dripping off my clothes, then glanced back at the camera like he was choosing his words for maximum effect. "I can't believe this," he said. "Some people think they can just walk in here," and I stepped closer, not to intimidate him, to stop the lie from gaining oxygen. "Enough," I said. Cody's eyes flicked to my wet shirt and something like satisfaction flashed across his face. Not because he'd won an argument, because he'd marked me, because he thought humiliation was power. He leaned in until only I could hear him, his smile tight and poisonous. "You're done," he whispered. "You just don't know it yet." Then he pulled back and turned his whole body toward the crowd, voice booming like a declaration. "My wife is the CEO of this hospital," he shouted. The words hit the lobby like a thrown chair. Heads snapped up, people shifted, phones rose higher. Cody pointed at me like I was a criminal. "You lay a hand on me, you bury your career in Chicago," he said loud and confident. "My wife will have you thrown out of here today. And if you think you're coming back for treatment, you and your whole family, forget it. You'll be blacklisted across the entire system. Blacklisted. In a hospital." For a second, I didn't feel anger. I felt something colder. A sick kind of clarity. The coffee on my clothes wasn't the real stain. The real stain was a culture where a kid could say that out loud and believe it. And the worst part was based on the admin keycard, the stamped exceptions, the way he carried himself. He wasn't just bluffing for a camera. He believed he'd been promised something real. I drew in a slow breath through my nose, the kind you take when you're trying to keep your heart from driving the steering wheel. Cody took my silence as fear. He smiled wider, soaking in the attention. "That's what I thought," he said. Then a voice cut in from my left, firm, controlled, unmistakably clinical. "Step back." Dr. Naomi Chen had returned. She moved through the thinning circle of people like she belonged at the center of order, not chaos. Her sleeves were pushed up, her hair still slightly loose from the code she'd just run, and her eyes were sharp in that way they got when someone endangered the mission. She placed herself between Cody and me without making a show of it. Not protective like a lover. Protective like a physician protecting a sterile field from contamination. "This is the main lobby," she said. "You're causing a disturbance." Cody looked her up and down, and for a second I saw him hesitate. Naomi carried weight in this building. Even people who didn't know her name knew her posture. But his confidence returned quickly, like he remembered the borrowed power he thought he held. "Oh, Dr. Chen." he said, dripping fake respect. Perfect timing. Tell your friend to stop harassing staff. Naomi didn't argue. She didn't trade insults. She didn't raise her voice. She simply lifted her hand and pointed to the large plaque mounted on the wall behind the reception desk, the one with Northbridge's Code of Conduct in clean, bold print. "Read it," she said. Cody scoffed. "Seriously, read it," Naomi repeated, and there was no room in her tone for negotiation. A few people turned to the plaque. A nurse near the elevators crossed her arms. Even the security guard stopped pretending not to watch. Naomi's finger traced down the lines. "No filming patients, visitors, or staff without explicit permission," she said. "No disruptive conduct. Professional attire required. Respectful treatment of employees and visitors." She looked directly at Cody. "You are violating multiple policies." Cody's face tightened. He glanced at the phones pointed at him and tried to turn it into swagger. "Policies are for regular people," he said. "I'm not a regular intern." Naomi's expression didn't change, but her eyes chilled. "Every person in this building is regular, under policy," she said. "That's the point." Cody snorted, then said the thing that made my stomach clench for a different reason, because it showed exactly what kind of rot had been allowed to grow. "You're a doctor," he said, sneering. "You're basically just an employee. Don't talk down to me like you run anything." Naomi took a half step toward him, calm and unshaking. "I run toward people who are dying," she said. "I don't run toward cameras." The crowd made a low sound, approval, discomfort, something in between. Cody's jaw worked. He hated that Naomi wouldn't play his game. He turned back to me, lifted his chin, and repeated his claim louder, as if volume could turn fiction into law. "My wife is the CEO," he said again. "You're finished." I looked at him. Really looked. The arrogance, the certainty, the keycard he'd snatched like it could save him. The way he'd said he was here because the person at the top brought him in. And I felt the last thin thread of patience snap, not in anger, but in decision. I reached into my pocket, pulled out my phone, and opened my contacts. The name at the top stared back at me, a name that used to mean safety. Vivian Sloan. I pressed call. Cody's grin faltered. The phone rang. Once. Twice. I switched to speaker and raised the volume until everyone in the circle could hear the clean electronic tone. Vivian picked up on the third ring, her voice slightly breathless, like she'd been mid-sentence in a meeting. "Thane," she said. "You landed. Why didn't I cut her off?" "Viv," I said, and my voice came out calm enough to scare even me. "You should come down here. Your new husband just threw coffee all over me." The lobby froze. Even the PA system seemed quieter. Cody went pale so fast it was almost funny, like the blood drained straight out of his face and left him hollow. On the other end of the line, Vivian didn't speak for a beat. Just silence. Then tighter. Lower. "Where are you, main lobby?" I said. "Right now." "What is this?" she breathed, and I could hear the strain under the control. "You have 5 minutes," I said. "If you're not here in 5 miles, Kessler will bring the file straight into your VIP meeting room and we can address it in front of the delegation." Her inhale caught. A tiny sound, but in that lobby it landed like a crack in glass. "Thane," she whispered, and now there was warning in her voice. Warning for me, not for Cody. "Don't do this here." 5 minutes, I repeated, then ended the call before she could build a narrative. I lowered my phone and looked at Cody. He stood motionless, his live stream still running, his eyes wide and wet with sudden fear. "Keep recording," I told him softly. "I want the city to see how my wife handles her new husband." And as the seconds began to tick by, I realized the coffee on my clothes had done me a favor. It had made everything visible. 5 minutes can feel like nothing when you're waiting for an elevator. 5 minutes can feel like an hour when your life is about to split in half in public. I didn't wipe the coffee off. I didn't rush to a restroom. I stood there in the middle of the lobby with my shirt clinging cold against my skin, the stain spreading down my pants, dripping onto the floor in slow, steady drops. Let it sit where it belonged, I thought. Let everyone see the mess exactly as it happened. The circle around us widened on its own. People didn't want to be too close, but they didn't want to miss anything either. Nurses hovered near the edges, pretending to walk somewhere while staying in place. A couple patients' family members watched with the guilty excitement of people who knew they shouldn't be enjoying it but couldn't look away. Naomi stayed beside me just slightly forward, just enough that Cody couldn't close the distance without having to step into her space. Not threatening, not dramatic, simply present like a line drawn in quiet ink. Cody tried to recover. He swallowed, forced a laugh, and lifted his phone again, but his hand shook. "She's coming," he said to his stream voice too high. "It's fine. People are going to learn today." He sounded like someone repeating a lie to convince himself. I glanced up at the internal screen above the desk. The schedule ticker still rolled CEO Vivian Sloan hosting investor delegation in VIP conference executive floor. That meant my call hadn't just reached her. It had detonated in the middle of a room full of people whose money and confidence kept this place moving. I didn't hear the public elevator. I heard the executive one. A soft chime from the side hallway, the secured corridor most visitors never even noticed. The doors there opened into a private elevator that went straight to the executive floor. Naomi's eyes flicked toward it. Mine did too. That told me Vivian was trying to control the entrance, minimize witnesses, contain damage. But the lobby was already a courtroom. The elevator doors slid open. Vivian came out fast. She was dressed like the CEO. She'd trained herself to be tailored blazer, sleek blouse hair, pinned back clean makeup, flawless from a distance. But up close, the polish cracked. A sheen of sweat shone at her temple. Her breathing wasn't steady. Her collar sat slightly off like she'd yanked at it while running. Her eyes swept the scene in one past me soaked in coffee, Naomi beside me, the phones, the circle of people, Cody holding his camera like a shield. She didn't ask if I was okay. Not first. Her first reflex was assessment, calculation, exit routes. Then her gaze landed on Cody and something hard flashed across her face. Not surprise, not confusion, recognition. Cody saw her and surged forward like a drowning man spotting a lifeboat. "Babe," he said loudly, too loudly, grabbing at her hand. "Finally. Tell them. Tell them who you are. This guy and that doctor have been bullying me," and he shoved me and Vivian's body went still. She looked down at Cody's fingers on her hand like they were something dirty. For 1 second, her face showed nothing. Then her palm moved. The slap cracked through the lobby, sharp enough to make people flinch. Cody stumbled back, eyes wide, hand flying to his cheek. His phone dipped, but it didn't stop recording. The live stream kept rolling, capturing the exact moment his fantasy collapsed. Vivian's voice snapped out, cold and furious. "Do not touch me," she said. Cody blinked like his brain couldn't process what had happened. "What, Viv? What are you doing?" Vivian turned, slightly projecting her voice so the entire lobby could hear. "I don't know who you are," she said. "I have never met you in my life. You are causing a disturbance. You are filming inside a hospital, and you are now making false claims about me in front of staff and patients." The air sucked out of the room. Cody's mouth opened and shut. His face went from shock to anger in a flash like humiliation lit a fuse. "You're lying!" he choked out. Your Vivian's eyes cut to him, lethal. Security, she called, and 2 guards who'd been hovering at the edge stepped closer. "Remove him if he escalates." Cody swung his gaze to me, then to Naomi, then back to Vivian. His voice cracked with panic. "You're doing this because he's here," he said, pointing at me. "You told me Vivian cut him off so fast it was surgical. I told you nothing," she said. "You're delusional." Then she turned toward me, and her entire posture changed. The hard CEO edge softened into something intimate and controlled the tone she used when she wanted the room to feel like a private conversation, even with 100 witnesses. "Thane," she said quietly, stepping closer. "You came back without telling me. I was in the middle of a high-level meeting. I don't know what this boy is trying to do, but he's clearly using our name for attention." I stared at her. There was a time I would have wanted to believe that immediately. A time I would have reached for the comfort of her explanation just to stop the pain from spreading. But I'd watched her come out of that elevator. I'd watched her eyes find Cody and recognize him before she ever saw me. And I'd watched her sacrifice him without hesitation, not because she was offended, but because she was managing a crisis. Cody's breathing turned ragged. He took a step forward, rage and desperation battling in his face. "You don't get to erase me," he shouted. "You don't get to after everything." Vivian snapped her head toward him. "Stop!" Cody shook his head violently like he was trying to shake off the shock. "No," he said, voice rising. "No, you don't get to stand there and act like I'm some stranger. You were in my bed at the Peninsula. You—" A wave went through the crowd at that name. Chicago luxury old money, the kind of place that smelled like power. Vivian's face tightened. Cody kept going, words spilling out like blood. "You bought me gifts," he shouted. "You promised me a real role. You promised you'd bring me upstairs into admin so I wouldn't be stuck fetching charts like some nobody. You said you were tired of him. You said." Vivian moved as if to step forward, and Naomi immediately shifted, blocking her line without laying a hand on her. "Do not approach him," Naomi said, calm but firm. "Not like this." Vivian's eyes flashed. "Dr. Chen, stay out." Of Naomi didn't flinch. "This is my hospital too," she said, "and he's an intern. You don't get to intimidate him into silence in front of patients." The security guard stood closer now, watching Cody, watching Vivian, watching me, uncertain which direction the danger was coming from. Cody's voice cracked again, but now it wasn't just panic. It was revenge. "You know what?" he yelled, pointing at Vivian with a shaking hand. "Fine. Act like you don't know me. Then explain the messages, explain the calendar invites, explain why I have a key card to the executive floor, explain why HR stamped my badge like I'm some kind of exception." The word exception hung in the air like smoke. Vivian's face went too still. I turned slightly, meeting her eyes in front of everyone, and asked the question I'd been holding since O'Hare. "If you don't know him," I said evenly, "why does he have an executive floor admin key card?" Vivian blinked once. It was a tiny moment, barely anything. But it lasted a beat too long, the pause of someone calculating what lie would survive the room. "And why did HR approve dress code and access exceptions for him?" I added, my voice steady with authorization coming from your office. The lobby felt like it stopped breathing. Vivian's lips parted as if she was about to speak, then closed again. Her eyes darted not to me but past me, toward the watching phones, toward the circle, toward the narrative she could already feel slipping out of her hands. I stood there with coffee drying on my skin and the truth hardening in my chest. This wasn't just about betrayal. This was about doors being opened that should have stayed locked. And my wife, the CEO of my father's hospital, had just been cornered in the one place she couldn't edit the footage afterward. I didn't move. Not because I was stunned, but because I knew better than to be the first to break formation. The lobby wasn't a lobby anymore. It had become a tribunal. A pulsing, oxygen-thin room full of staff, patients, visitors, and cell phone cameras, all watching a CEO's marriage and career get stripped bare beneath LED hospital lights. Vivian tried to salvage what power she had left. She raised her voice firm and clipped. "Everyone back to your stations. This is a private matter, and anyone filming will be subject to disciplinary action." It might have worked any other day, but not now. I stepped forward and cut her off, my voice calm but sharp enough to split a crowd. "You don't have that authority right now. This facility is owned by Northbridge Health Holdings. Control of this building rests with the board, and until this incident is reviewed, your directives are temporarily suspended." A ripple moved through the room like someone had cracked a pane of glass. "Who the hell are you?" Cody spat, still trying to play the part of indignant victim. I turned toward the crowd, not him. "My name is Thane Whitlock," I said. "Majority shareholder and chairman of the board at Northbridge." Gasps. A few phones zoomed in. Vivian's mouth opened, but no sound came. That was the first real flinch I saw on her all day. "I appointed Vivian Sloan as CEO myself," I added, keeping my voice even. "But board appointments are subject to ongoing evaluation. And that authority includes the right to suspend or revoke executive privileges pending investigation." There was no more doubt about who held the wheel now. "I have one question," I continued. "Why did a personal account linked to Cody Kramer receive an exact transfer of $2 million, the same value as the European imaging equipment deal I've been negotiating this quarter?" Vivian's face paled. She opened her mouth ready with rehearsed lines. It was an advance, she said quickly. A private investment, some documentation is still being finalized. I didn't argue. I just said 2 words. I have records. Then came the quiet footsteps of a man who didn't need to raise his voice. Miles Kessler emerged from the hallway, briefcase in hand. He nodded once at me, then calmly opened what we had agreed would be called File A. He read out loud and ordered bank statements showing wire transfers from a shell entity registered in Delaware. A digital lease signed under Vivian's executive email for a River North condo now listed under Cody's name. Executive keycard logs granting Cody unrestricted access to our secure operations wing hotel surveillance clips, authenticated through legal request channels. An email from our German supplier confirming they never received the deposit Vivian claimed had already been paid, each line hit like a courtroom gavel. Vivian stood frozen, her blazer now sticking slightly to the sweat on her back. Cody's skin flushed a mottled red as the dollar figure registered. Wait. I thought Vivian told me this was part of the bonus plan. She said it was hers to use. You received money, I said flatly. You received housing. You accessed restricted areas. Whether you knew or not, you were part of an illegal funnel. Cody's voice cracked. She said I earned it. That I helped her think through strategy, that she was going to make it official. He didn't realize it, but with every word he nailed the coffin tighter. Intent could be debated. Receipt could not. Then Naomi stepped forward, evidence tablet in hand, voice controlled but lethal. Our internal procurement system flagged that the ventilator and MRI suite were marked as paid and shipped, but neither device arrived. The supplier confirms no funds were received, and the oncology wing has been short on ventilator beds for over a month. That last line stole the room. We were no longer talking about an affair or a dirty bonus. This was now about compromised patient safety, real lives put at risk for personal gain. I'm issuing an immediate suspension of CEO authority for Vivian Sloan, I declared. All access to be revoked, including digital credentials and physical keycards. Office sealed under board supervision. All relevant documents are to be preserved under legal audit. Security didn't wait for orders. They stepped behind her, not roughly, but with protocol. Vivian didn't resist, but she did what I knew she would. She turned toward the crowd and toward me. You see this, she shouted, her voice cracking now. This is a personal vendetta. Thane is trying to destroy me because I left him. She looked toward a younger employee holding a phone. He'll come for you too, Naomi. You think this is about ethics? You're just his next pawn. I didn't flinch. I didn't answer. Because I knew where this was headed now. Vivian wasn't planning to win in court. She planned to win online. I leaned toward Miles. Start building our media counter strategy, I said. She's going to smear everything. Let's make sure we don't leave her any room to rewrite the truth. We didn't waste a minute. As soon as Vivian was escorted out, I stepped up to the reception desk, asked for the mic, and turned to face the gathered staff, patients, and whoever else still stood frozen under the lobby lights. I want to apologize to all of you for what you just witnessed. The room was hushed now, not out of fear, but a strange reverence. The CEO had been dethroned in front of them, not by an outsider, but by someone from within the walls of power itself. This hospital exists to save lives, I said. Not to feed egos or cover up lies. If you're a nurse, a doctor, a tech, a volunteer, thank you for showing up today and doing your job while others were trying to burn this place down. Heads nodded. No applause. Just the weight of reality sinking in. And to our patients, this is your hospital. You deserve better than what you saw. We will earn back your trust. That's my promise. Then I turned back toward the crowd and announced the one thing nobody expected to hear today. As of this moment, the position of acting CEO will be filled by Dr. Naomi Chen. The room didn't explode, but there was a palpable shift, respect, surprise, maybe even relief. She spent her life here. She knows the pulse of this building. And more importantly, she knows what integrity means. Naomi stepped forward, still in scrubs, still holding her evidence tablet. but in that moment she looked more executive than anyone in a suit all day. "I'm giving her full authority to do 2 things immediately," I said. 1, launch a complete inventory of all equipment orders. 2, review every personnel override involving security access, hiring exceptions, and financial approvals. She didn't nod. She just went to work. Meanwhile, security began leading Cody toward a private side room to take his statement. That should have been the end of his role. But no. A quick report from Evelyn hit my inbox. Cody hadn't been onboarded through standard HR channels. His file had no interview logs, no training certifications, just a sign-off with Vivian's credentials, and one more buried under a name I knew: Lorraine Abbott, a senior HR exec who owed her last promotion to Vivian. This wasn't a lone betrayal, it was a web, and it wasn't just the money. Another alert from Legal 2 versions of the European equipment contract had been found. The first mine was clean. Clear terms, proper transfer schedule. The second had fake payment confirmations with forged wire codes. Someone had cooked a double book to move money without triggering alerts and planned to pin the blame elsewhere if it ever surfaced. Then, as security was escorting Cody, Vivian fired her last shot. "I'll be suing," she spat at the guards. "You humiliated me. You abused your position." "And you," she added, turning toward Naomi with a dagger in her tone, "you think taking my job will keep you clean." It was a warning shot aimed at the public narrative. Make it about power, not truth. Make it look like I crushed her out of jealousy, like I handed Naomi the crown because I couldn't stand to see Vivian win. It would have been just noise if not for what happened next. Miles handed me his phone. Livestream clips are already up. I watched my chest tightening, cut edits, close angles, me standing cold and still, Naomi beside me, Vivian getting slapped. Then me declaring her removed from power. No context, no build-up, no documents or voices of reason. It wasn't sloppy. It was strategic. Someone had clipped those frames with surgical precision and spread them with help. PR hands, bot networks. A smear campaign not made in panic but planted long ago. Set up a full digital response team, I told Miles. Collect all raw footage, trace source accounts, and monitor narrative trends. We might need a press conference within 24 hours. And Naomi, I turned toward her. No public response. Not yet. No tweets. No apologies. No explaining yourself to people who aren't asking honest questions. She nodded. That night I returned home to silence. My shirt still crusted with dried coffee hung in the laundry room. I didn't wash it. Some stains shouldn't be erased. They should be studied. Miles texted me late. Our forensic team had traced a payment to a shell PR firm specializing in reputation control, from Vivian's discretionary fund. I stood by the sink staring at my own reflection. This wasn't about marriage anymore. Wasn't even about fraud. This was war over who gets to tell the story. And I wasn't about to let her write the ending. I hadn't even had time to sit down before the war drums started beating again. The second I stepped into my condo, my phone began lighting up like a slot machine. News alerts, social media tags, partner messages, unknown numbers, one after another. The headlines were brutal: CEO ousted by jealous husband Naomi Lurie. From surgeon to mistress in the boardroom, coup billionaire board chairman uses power to replace wife with lover. My inbox flooded with clips, edited, doctored, and carefully cut to push one narrative. They showed my stoic face as I called Vivian down to the lobby. Naomi stepping between me and chaos. Vivian recoiling, betrayed. But what didn't make the cut: Cody hurling coffee at me. His public meltdown. The fact that I stood calmly through it all. The full context had been amputated. Vivian had launched a scorched earth media campaign and she'd hit fast. Miles Kessler was at my door before midnight holding a report like it was a bomb defusal manual. Our IT traced it, he said. Thousands of fake accounts flooding the hospital's socials, yours, Naomi's. Coordinated activity, paid for through a shell entity linked to a black hat PR firm. Out of Miami. Funds routed from an anonymous LLC in the Cayman Islands. Classic Vivian. She didn't want to win in court, at least not yet. She wanted to break me in public first. She was applying pressure: either I give her favorable divorce terms quietly, or she keeps turning the public against me until I lose all leverage. If I responded emotionally, I'd play right into her hands. So I didn't. Instead, I set the terms. We don't chase the noise, I told Miles. We realign the spotlight. The next morning, I held a press conference at the Northbridge Auditorium. I wanted facts on the record. No spin, no edit. I instructed Miles to bring everything raw lobby security footage, keycard logs, exact timestamps, internal policies on misconduct. I wanted proof that couldn't be twisted. Naomi was hesitant about attending, but I needed her there not just for optics but because she'd earned the right to stand with truth. "I'll go," she said quietly, "but I'm not performing for them." "Good," I replied. "Don't. Just be you." When we walked onto that stage, the air felt electric. The room was packed, press badges, recording lights, reporters practically sitting in the aisles. The atmosphere wasn't journalistic, it was gladiatorial. I wore a dark, simple suit. Naomi wore her white coat, no jewelry, hair pulled back, still, steady. I started. "This isn't a tabloid segment. This is about the safety of patients, a hospital's integrity. We are here to answer questions, not manipulate sentiment." A reporter raised her mic. "Mr. Whitlock, did you remove your wife from the CEO role to install your romantic partner?" I exhaled. Deliberate. Steady. Before I could answer, Naomi spoke. "I'd like to respond to that," she said, reaching for the mic. The room fell silent. She looked at the crowd head-on. "Thane and I have known each other for a long time. We've worked together, trusted each other. But we are not in a romantic relationship." A wave of murmurs passed through the press corps. She continued, "I've served in hospitals my entire adult life. I've held a scalpel inches from a child's brain. You don't survive in this field without clear boundaries. I know mine. I've kept them." She didn't dodge. She didn't grovel. She stood in truth, plain, powerful, undeniable. And because she didn't hide, the rumor lost oxygen. But then she did something even I didn't expect. She inhaled, then said, "That doesn't mean I haven't cared for him." The room went still again. "I have loved Thane quietly for a very long time," she said. "But I have never acted on that feeling. I knew he was married. I respected that boundary. I still do." She wasn't pleading. She wasn't confessing. She was disarming every weapon Vivian had tried to forge in the shadows. She turned to me for half a second. I could see it in her eyes. She knew this was a personal cost, and she paid it anyway. Then came the final blow. Naomi asked the tech crew to display a document on the screen. It was a legal report signed and verified. A 3-year-old child. DNA confirmed to be Vivian's. A child left in the care of a facility in Rose Harbor. No visitation records. No financial support. No mention in public filings. No trace in Vivian's curated image. "This isn't about shaming someone's past," Naomi said calmly. "This is about a pattern image over truth, power over accountability, and children patients left behind." That was it. The room erupted. The coverage flipped in real time. Live tweets, headlines, breaking news. But I wasn't done. I called up Miles to present the supplier emails confirming no equipment had been paid for. We revealed the modified contracts showing falsified approvals. And finally, the $2 million trail into a shell company tied to Cody's high-rise condo in River North. I looked directly into the camera. When you strip a hospital of life-saving equipment, you don't just steal money. You gamble with lives. That's not a leadership failure. That's a moral collapse. I ended the conference by committing full cooperation with the DA and announcing an independent audit with results to be made public. Later that night, I watched the new wave of stories break. The tone had changed. Questions were aimed at Vivian now. But I didn't relax. When a cornered animal runs out of lies, it doesn't surrender, it bites. And Vivian had always had sharp teeth. Vivian fell faster than I expected, but not quietly. Within 48 hours, donors pulled out. Board allies stopped answering her calls. Even her PR firm suspended services once the audit launched. But she wasn't done scheming. She tried to contact Cody, her last wild card. She needed the papers, he had the devices. She needed to control the narrative, or burn the pieces. Problem was, Cody wasn't the scared intern anymore. He was angry. Vivian showed up at his River North condo unannounced and unhinged. What followed made headlines of its own. Neighbors heard shouting, glass breaking. When police arrived, they found them wrestling over a tablet, both injured, both shouting accusations. Vivian and Cody were arrested for domestic disturbance and property damage. Their phones were seized, providing investigators with text trails, audio notes, draft contracts, off-the-record payments. Vivian had turned her own affair partner into evidence. That was the beginning of the end. Miles filed for divorce the next morning. He attached documentation, misconduct, fraud, betrayal. We filed for emergency asset protection to shield the hospital, our child's education fund, and my father's legacy holdings. I wasn't grieving anymore. I was cleaning house. At Cook County Court, Vivian showed up with hollow eyes and makeup barely masking her stress. This wasn't the CEO I once admired. This was a woman unraveling. The judge reviewed everything: supplier statements, manipulated records, audit drafts, surveillance logs. Vivian pled guilty as part of a deal, either to lessen the charges or avoid worse outcomes. But the cost was clear. She lost custody, lost control, lost public standing, and was referred for criminal prosecution. I didn't cheer. I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt done. The criminal court handed down the rest. Vivian was sentenced for embezzlement, obstruction, and endangerment through negligence. Cody took a lesser sentence in exchange for cooperation. Both were banned from holding executive roles in healthcare again. Northbridge didn't just survive, we restructured. We implemented open-source auditing for purchases, overhauled the leadership team, and reinstated patient-first policies. Naomi personally ensured that every department affected by the missing equipment was re-equipped. Fast. We closed the gaps. We reopened trust. Weeks later, Naomi invited me to a quiet dinner overlooking the Chicago River. Not to celebrate, just to breathe. She gave me a gift, a glass sculpture of a human heart, fractured lines running through it like veins of crystal. It's not perfect, she said, but it's honest, like us. She didn't ask me to forget the past. She asked if she could walk beside me while I healed. I nodded. Yes, I said. But the truth comes first. Always. We weren't building a replacement life. We were building something new. Years passed. Northbridge expanded. We built a new wing, Whitlock Pavilion, dedicated to pediatric intensive care. One afternoon, I walked its garden path with Naomi. Peaceful, bright, clean air, a future that finally felt earned. Then I saw her. Across the street behind the security fence, Vivian. Older. Still. Watching. Naomi followed my gaze. You want to say something to her? I looked at Vivian for a long moment. She didn't move. I turned back to Naomi. No, I don't need to. I took her hand and walked away. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I had to look back. When a place built to heal turns into a stage for ego, the damage isn't just personal, it spills into the air everyone breathes. And sometimes the hardest part isn't exposing what happened. It's accepting that the people we trusted can choose image over integrity even when lives are on the line. If this story leaves anything with us, maybe it's this: we don't rebuild by becoming colder. We rebuild by getting clearer about boundaries, about accountability, and about the kind of kindness that refuses to look away. We can hold truth in one hand and compassion in the other without turning either into a weapon. And when the noise gets loud, we remember that dignity doesn't need an audience to be real. Thank you for being here and for sitting with us through this. If you'd like, tell me in the comments where you're listening from and what moment hit you the hardest. And if you want to be part of a community that listens, reflects, and shares stories like this, you can subscribe to stay close. Until next time, take care of your heart, and I'll see you soon.